Well, thank you guys so much for being here. I am Tracy Dixon-Salazar. I'm the executive director of the LGS Foundation, and I'm going to get us started. And we have a jam-packed agenda, but I'm really excited about all the talks. And I think what I'm most excited about is all of you here and all of you at home that are here to try to make things better in the LGS research space, whether that's clinical trials or a research study, and our commitment to do that. So thank you for being here. This is going to be a fast-paced, exciting meeting, but we would not be here without the support of our many sponsors, and many of you are in the room, and I just can't thank you enough. I want to thank Takeda for the work that they're doing to support this meeting, but also in the clinical trial space. You're going to hear from a lot of families at this meeting, a lot of caregivers, and many of us are just waiting for the next treatment to come out. And so when anyone comes in the space and says, we want to help, we get a little teary, a little weepy, because we need help, and we appreciate being able to work with people. So we want to thank you, and we want to thank our additional sponsors, our gold sponsors, Jazz Pharma, who are here. Thank you for supporting this meeting. UCB, Longboard, Norellis, and Livanova, thank you guys for supporting this meeting and getting everybody together to have this discussion. And then, of course, our bronze sponsors. We really could not do this without you, and really appreciate you guys supporting us and getting us together. A shout out to the organizers for this meeting. I think Dr. Crino said, wow, we pulled it off. We got everybody in the room together. Our meetings are a ton of work. We are a tiny foundation, and we are mostly run by people who are raising loved ones with LGS. And so I just want to say thank you to Dr. Perry, Dr. Worrell, Dr. Crino, and Dr. Wheelis for their guidance on this. And I think it's going to be a fantastic meeting. And thank you to you. We have a whole group of people in the room and another 40 or 50 people who are at home that include members of the FDA, members of industry, people who work within industry, whether they're making medications or devices in epilepsy or in LGS specifically. We have many healthcare providers that are here, researchers. We have other advocacy groups that we partner with because obviously LGS overlaps many of the other developmental and epileptic encephalopathies, or the DEEs. And we have many families living with LGS that are here. And this is our first time really bringing all of you guys together to have a conversation. And all of these groups, all of you guys, we don't speak the same language. The way that families speak about LGS is different than the way researchers speak about it. And clinicians speak about treatment different than industry representatives do. And so this is really a chance for us all to come together and have an honest conversation about how we can make research better in LGS. And that could be clinical trials, it could be a research study, but the ultimate goal of this meeting is to bring each of these points of view forward so that all of us can hear how the others talk about LGS, how we think about LGS. And then at the end, when we get to session 4, to have a conversation about, and we're going to hear a lot, between now and then about how we do things now and how we might do things because they're being done this way in other areas or they're emerging research. But then we're going to talk about how we can move clinical trials forward in a better way in LGS or research studies in general, because I think we all can agree that we need to do better. And largely the industry has moved forward, without the patient families weighing in. And just in the last 5 to 10 years, we've really seen an increase in the number of companies that want to talk to patient families and really understand our journey and make something that is incredibly meaningful, impactful. And so the families are here and they're coming out more in force to try to support the efforts that are ongoing to help our loved ones with LGS. So we're really excited about this meeting. The layout for the meeting is here. Like I said, we set a pretty grueling pace. We gave everybody 15 minutes and we told them they could talk for 10 and they'd have 5 minutes for questions. Nobody gave room for questions. So the questions will all be held at the panel session. There's a very long panel session at the end, and that is fine. But we have to get to the point quickly in LGS because we never know when the next seizure is going to hit. And it creates a sense of urgency to give a talk in 15 minutes. So session 1, we're going to be talking about measuring what's important to families and getting the different perspectives of the people that I said were in the room. In session 2, we're going to start taking a look at specific ways that we measure, especially non-seizure outcomes, but we want to talk about ways that are being used now for measuring. And then tomorrow we'll go into session 3 where we're going to do a deep dive on sleep. I think sleep is a very underrepresented area in LGS specifically. There is a clear connection. We hear it over and over. So we're going to have a great session tomorrow on that. And then finally in session 4 tomorrow afternoon, we're going to have 3 breakouts where the rubber will meet the road, and we really want to be bold to try to figure out how we can advance research in LGS as it relates to seizure endpoints, how we do it in non-seizure endpoints, and then thinking uniquely about the adult population. And the whole purpose of this meeting is to guide the funding strategy for the LGS Foundation moving forward over the next 3 years. So we will take this information, we will process it, we will share it back with you, and this will help to move things forward from our research grant pipeline and hopefully many others. And I want you to be bold. I hear constantly that LGS is too hard, and it's too heterogeneous, and it's too confusing, and it's too refractory. And that is not you. You are not those people that say that. You are the people that can do hard things, as Renee Schellhaus will say. And so I want us to think bold and think outside the box as we're thinking about how we can make a difference. The science in the last 10 years has been incredible. The involvement of researchers and interest in LGS is there, and there is a lot we can do for LGS patients. We as families don't have the luxury of giving up on our loved ones, and we are so grateful that there's a whole group of you that agree that there is something we can do about this horrible disorder, and we're not just going to ignore it. So be bold in your thinking about how we could make things better. So I just want to end with a couple of housekeeping items. There have been a few agenda changes, so we'll try to point those out as we go along, but we should be back on track by this afternoon. It's mostly this morning. All the questions are going to be held till the panel session at the end, so please write your questions down in the tablets of paper that you guys have, or if you're at home, you can send them in online, you can type them into the chat, and we'll get those there. For speaker introductions, I'm going to introduce all the speakers in a given session, and then they're going to get up and they're going to tell you who they are and what they do and where they work and maybe a fun fact about themselves, right? So this ought to be interesting. But each speaker will introduce themselves. And then I just wanted to mention that this is being recorded. So we have a whole group of families that could not make it and other people that could not make it that want to see these talks. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that. With that, I want to take a moment to introduce our host, Dr. Pete Crino. Dr. Crino works here at the University of Maryland, which is actually just right across the corner. And he will give his more thorough introduction here, because I was going to give his fancy introduction, but I left my notes at the table. Sorry, Dr. Crino. I want to just say, I always like to do a fun introduction. So I knew Dr. Crino when he was like a brand new assistant professor, and he was just getting started out. He was like baby Pete Crino, and it's so nice to see him all grown up and ruling the world and being the incredible doctor that he is. But he is our host here, and I can't wait for you to hear more about his role and what he's doing in the space, because it's incredible, and we're so lucky to have him working with us in LGS. Dr. Crino.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the kind introduction, Tracy. I guess that means that I'm now old man Pete Crino, which is really sad, really sad. So I just want to extend a warm welcome to everyone here to the city of Baltimore. Indeed, I am the chair of the Department of Neurology at the University of Maryland, and we are literally right across the street. I did want to just say to everyone that, this is really fabulous to get everyone in the room together to have this conversation and to be frank and be creative, to push some barriers, to disrupt things and think creatively. I think there's a lot to do in Lennox-Gastaut. I'll share with you very briefly my professional journey in this area, because I think it is relevant to some of the conversations that we're going to have here. I did want to just pause for a second. I was wondering if you could possibly just join me in acknowledging this literal force of nature in Lennox-Gastaut. Tracy. So the University of Maryland School of Medicine is literally right across the street. We are the oldest school of medicine here. We were founded in 1807. We're the 5th oldest medical school in the United States. And we have a very busy level 4 epilepsy center led by Dr. Jennifer Hopp. We do see, in fact, a lot of individuals who are battling Lennox-Gastaut. My personal and professional journey has really been starting way back when I was probably baby P. Crino, which was that I was involved with a genetic disease we'll hear a little bit about today, tuberous sclerosis complex. And we have Martina Bebbin here and Dr. Steve Roberts, who's here from the Tuberous Sclerosis Complex Alliance. That was a disorder that I was highly involved with. And I started seeing, I'm an adult neurologist, so I started seeing adult patients. And it turns out that there was an awful lot of TSC individuals who were affected with Lennox-Gastaut. And it took me a while to sort of catch on that there was this sort of this connection. And this was way back in 1996. I started the first adult practice for individuals with TSC. And what happened was people started asking me to say, well, I know you see tuberous sclerosis, but can you see this? Can you see that? Can you see? And I started adding patients in who were adults who had LGS. And this led me recently, in the last 4 years, to establish here in the state of Maryland, we have something called the Clinical Center for Adults with Neurodevelopmental Disorders. And essentially, it addresses the need of a lot of adults who have a variety of different neurodevelopmental disorders, often associated with LGS, who move out of outstanding pediatric neurology care and kind of have nowhere really to go. And so this has been a really successful endeavor. We've seen lots and lots of folks from the greater Maryland, DC, Virginia, and Delaware region. So that's been very, very productive. I think there's a way to think about LGS, which is that it really is a lifespan disorder. And I think a lot of individuals get fabulous care through child neurologists, but that's just maybe 18 years of life, and there's a whole other part of life that still leads us with many, many opportunities for therapy and intervention. So as an adult neurologist, I'm actually very, very excited about that, and we'll hopefully discuss that in the sessions tomorrow. But anyway, I did want to welcome you all. If you do want to go out at night and you want to get, I'm not suggesting you want to get drinks, but if you did, I would say a quick Uber ride from here is over to Fells Point. There's lots of little bars and clubby things over there. It's kind of nice. It's kind of fun. There's lots of people walking around, so I strongly encourage it. Baltimore's a fun city. So welcome to Baltimore. Welcome to the conference. Thanks very much.
Thank you, all grown up, Dr. Crino. We appreciate it. So it's my absolute pleasure to introduce Michelle Campbell from the FDA. I met Michelle through the patient-focused drug development efforts that the FDA is doing. And my daughter is 30 years old. She has LGS. And when I first came into this space as an advocate, it was actually with the Cure Epilepsy moms, Barb Kelly, Susan Axelrod, Jean Donalty. And doctors used to see us in the halls at AES and run away. And it wasn't just doctors, it was industry partners, it was other people. There was not really an open dialogue going on between patients and families. And I think a lot of the reason that has changed is because of people like you in the room, but we can't leave out the FDA and the efforts that you guys have really pushed when it comes to patient-focused drug development. They're very serious about it. Oftentimes I get invited to meetings and I always feel like I'm at the kiddie table, right? Oh, you're invited, but you're gonna be over there at the kids' table. But now we really feel like we have an equal seat at the table in a lot of cases. And I'm excited for you to hear some of the talks from industry at this meeting, because you'll hear about how they have worked with the LGS Foundation and other patient advocacy groups to really design a better trial or implement a better program. So with that, I'm going to introduce Michelle. She'll give you a fun fact about herself, but I just really can't underscore all the work that she's done in the patient-focused drug development area and the work that the FDA is doing. And it's just an honor to have you guys here. Dr. Campbell.
Well, good morning, everyone. I guess my fun fact is I'm a born and bred Marylander. So and I spent 20 years of my life in Baltimore, going to college, graduate school, working, living here. So when Tracy sent me the agenda and asked me, I was like, that's the quickest commute to a meeting I will ever have. And I don't need to use my GPS. And so I'm very happy to be back in Baltimore. I spent part of my 20 years prior to going to the FDA 9 years ago between the two academic institutions here, but the PhD might be from the one that's just across the street, actually. So, so welcome. Thank you for inviting me. As Tracy also mentioned, some of my colleagues are virtually watching this meeting as well. One of the exciting things when I saw this agenda was, yes, this is a conversation that needs to happen. When I provided the opening remarks at the LGS's externally-led patient-focused drug development meeting in October of 2019, I talked about how the agencies, and particularly the medical product centers, which CDER is one of three. We have our Center for Biologics and our Center for Devices, that we want to learn from the experts. and the experts is the patients and the caregivers. And we're here to listen and learn. And so I really see today and tomorrow as an opportunity to continue that engagement in learning. What can we do? How can we advance clinical trial design? How can we advance what we need to measure in a rigorous and scientific way that we could see a successful clinical trial? And so we are here again to listen to the community and to take back the lessons that we hear and the learnings. I think it's an important thing I like to say when I talk about PFDD, particularly to the patients and caregivers who are in the room or online, is that I know that sometimes you don't think we're listening or you can't see the results of what you've told us immediately. Clinical trials take time, and that actual end result of what you've told us may not be for many years. But please do know that we do take back everything you say. What you don't know is in those meetings, we are messaging each other. We're taking notes. We're actually having side conversations going, what do you think about that concept? How do we think we could do that into a trial? Could we measure that well? What do we think? Would we be able to really measure something like that? So we are constantly talking what you don't know behind the scenes from what we hear. And then if we're hopeful and we have an industry partner and sponsor come in and engage with us, we will try to have those conversations about what we've learned from the community. So we are listening, we are learning. It just may not be as present sometimes when it comes to an individual drug development program. But please know we learn from you. We're excited to be here. I shared this agenda with a couple of my colleagues, and they were like, I really wish I could go to that meeting too. This looks like such a fascinating agenda. And I've seen this work. I was actually this is day 7 for me of attending local meetings in the area, which means the DC, Northern Virginia area. And so this is day 7 for me, all in rare diseases. So, but I had a question yesterday at a meeting I was at for rare and orphan diseases. And it was, how does a patient group know what they need to fund? And I said, I cannot answer that question for you. And I would turn to the audience and I said, does anyone have any experience? I cannot help you. But I would say you want to talk to your experts to help make and help you decide what is the unmet needs and where to go. So Tracy, for you saying that really rings true to what I was hearing yesterday in one of my many meetings, where how does the patient community help decide? And I think it's doing something like this, bringing all stakeholders, because we are all stakeholders together, to have a conversation. So the best information, I always like to think, I'd rather have all the information to make the best informed decision. And hopefully that's what we'll be accomplishing over the next 2 days. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to learning from you guys.
Great. We are also thinking and listening, and we're really excited that you guys are here. I'm going to say that probably 100 more times because this is a really big deal for us to have you guys all here and thinking about LGS. We had one of our board members ask me recently, how many researchers do I know and clinicians that I know that get up every morning, every day, 365 days a year and think about LGS? And today I can say a lot, over 100, about 130, including our folks at home, and which is really exciting to me because it's our dream that people will be working on this problem, because I certainly think about it 24/7, 365. So I'm going to introduce the next round of speakers. So don't forget, if you're a speaker, to come up and tell us, who you are and what your role is, but also your fun fact. Don't forget. I'm going to start with Dr. Perry. He's moderating session 1, which is measuring what is most important to families in LGS research. And this is going to be a lot of talking about what we know and what we already do. So Dr. Perry is going to set the stage for us and talk about the different perspectives and what questions arise. And then I guess I get to introduce myself again, but I'm going to come back up and talk again about our PFDD. We've actually been on a long journey over multiple years to get to this point where everyone's in the room together. And then we'll hear from another family member, Jennifer Griffin, and she'll be sharing her story about seizures and safety and how that relates to her life at home with her son. And then Dr. Wuerl will be coming up and giving us a long talk about how we think about things from the healthcare provider perspective and how we measure things in LGS. After that, we'll have Dr. Dennis DeLugos, who's going to come up. He's going to talk about how we do clinical trials now and how we might think about doing them better. And then we're going to hear from two of our industry partners. We're really excited. We'll be hearing from Randall Kay from Longboard, where he's going to be giving the industry perspective on how they think about trials. And you can almost think about this as if you are in learning a different language. You're in a class to learn a different language, because there's a lot of families here and more becoming engaged. We have a 10,000 member community now, and we are adding 50 to 60 new families to our community every month. And these families want to be involved. So they're going to be learning from you as well as us learning from each other, which we do a lot. We learn from each other, but the families are not often in part of that. We'll be hearing also from Scott Anders from Takeda. He's going to be talking about the current Takeda trial that's going on for soticlestat in LGS and what they did and how they worked with the foundation, but also how they decided what to measure. And then finally, we'll bring up Dr. Anut Patel, who's going to be talking about the seizures or medicine in LGS study. And if you look in your program, you can read a little bit more about this, but it's the first comparative effectiveness study in LGS looking at medication-only track versus surgery and medication in LGS. And he's going to be talking about some of the early work they've done at deciding what's important to families. Then after that, we're going to have a very long panel. I think it's an hour and 15 minutes approximately, where we'll have a lot of questions, so write your questions down. And remember, we want to be bold, and we want to think about exactly how we can push trials to the next level together and what we need to do to get there. So with that, I'll bring up Dr. Perry, and thank you so much.